right up, man. You see me?
Does it look? Do I look like a hostage video?
Dude, absolutely. Because you definitely look like Iran hostage. You're in a room with no decorations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Just a glass of water. They are giving me water.
now talking with hostage Ted Alexandro, who is being held. Who are your captors? What do you know about your captors, Ted?
Hmm. Aren't our captors is the bigger question. No, I'm safe. They are treating me well.
They're treating you okay.
Yeah, yeah. For now.
I'm so glad to hear this. The entire comedy community has been really concerned about your well-being, not to mention all of your fans. So
Thank
you've got water, you've got food.
you. Yep, yep. At least a month's worth of both.
Thank you for doing this today, man. I really appreciate it. You were the
Pleasure,
first
buddy.
the first person I wanted to reach out to because you're often the person people look to for comedians in terms of like what the moral, baseline should be on things. It doesn't mean you're always right, doesn't mean everybody agrees, but if anybody, I think a lot of people do look to you, certainly our generation of comedians. And so I thought I'd start this conversation with about comics and the situation that we certainly find ourselves in financially with you. Everybody has a different amount. Everybody has different amounts of work, different amounts of money saved up, different needs and bills. So it's not like we're all in the same boat, except for the fact that whether you are, Joe Coy or Bill Burr, Ted Alexandro, Pete Dominic, or someone that's just started, you're not getting any work right now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that is fair to say right now, with the coronavirus pandemic being what it is. Pretty much everyone I know has stopped working for the immediate future and possibly long term. It could be 3 months, it could be longer. So, yeah, this impacts what is already a somewhat tenuous financial existence for a lot of us.
So let's just talk specifically about your situation. You have a newborn, your son, your beautiful baby boy
Yes,
was
I do.
born in December on Christmas Day, like the Lord, right?
Yes, you're referring to Jesus Christ. Yes,
Is
same day.
there, yes, I'm talking about the Son of God.
People can draw whatever conclusions they like. I'm not going to put that on a newborn, but the stakes are high.
Seems like you put a lot on this newborn. Why have a child right before the beginning of a pandemic? Did you guys discuss that? Do you think you've been responsible as parents in terms of
Yeah,
the conception?
we planned this whole thing out. An angel came to us, and we're just
Really?
we're just following instructions.
Angel, was there a gender? Was there a uniform? How would you describe what the angel looked like and how it appeared to you and your wife?
It was like an orb of light. It was genderless. Uh,
A genderless orb of light
yes, yes,
arrived and said, listen.
and said, "Look, you've got to do this for the humanity." And we said, "All right, we're on it." So
um, so how are you? What are your personal choices? You had a great Facebook post, which was one of the many impetuses. Is that a word? Is there multiple impetus?
yeah,
For
impetuses.
one of the impeti for when I call you is I really, I love what you wrote on Facebook in terms of, you live in New York City and right now you've canceled the work that you had left. You were going to be at a theater somewhere with Jim Gaffigan. Is that show still going on? The one that you are not doing?
Well, we were actually supposed to be heading to Mexico either this week or next for a week of shows all over Mexico. But I canceled that with Jim about 2 weeks ago, maybe three, maybe, yeah, 2.5 weeks ago. I said to Jim, I don't feel comfortable, with the newborn and all of the uncertainty. So I canceled that. That was one of the first things I canceled, and he understood. And then, in fact, he just came back from, I think he was in Colombia, because he's been doing a lot of international dates. So he just came back and cut that short. But I also canceled. I had like a bunch of Comedy Cellar dates this past week, and I emailed Esty, the booker there, and told her
Comedy club in New York City, of course. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Comedy Cellar, the Village Underground. Yeah, I canceled like 4 shows there. Just again, as I wrote in that Facebook post, being the father of a newborn obviously shifts your perspective. I might have been more cavalier in years past, uh, but I'm obviously paying more attention to this, reading, watching whatever news sources, and just want to err on the side of caution, and try to do what I can to be safe.
There are seemingly like two kinds of people or parents right now: those who are acting on an abundance of information and caution, and those who are maybe thinking that this is fear and panic being driven, I guess, by the media and others for some type of gain and profit. When in effect, I mean, you lost money this week. I lost money this week by our choices in terms of canceling the shows we did have. And then, the rest of those decisions are probably being made by the government or these other venues and so on in terms of work being canceled. You
I
cited,
would further break that down into uh, parents who have been visited by angelic orbs of light and those who have not. So
fair enough, yeah, and you guys were lucky to have that visit much earlier in the year, just before you conceived your beautiful baby boy, the Lord, the
yes,
Son of God, which is appropriate. But
the
I
second,
feel,
he's not,
yeah,
he's not
uh,
the, he does have a sibling.
junior sibling. Hi, this is the Lord. This is his brother. Um, you cited Italy and Iran, and I'm not a public health expert either, but we are tracking the same way they are, and they have arguably more of a unifying message. They have obviously a more socialist universal healthcare in countries like those. So it would seem that we are going to be in a far worse situation
Yeah,
than they are, according to what, or at least equal, because the bottom line is you don't know if you've got it. That's
yeah.
that's all you need to know. You don't know if you've got it. Some parents are like, well, we're gonna until we see something, then we're not gonna say something. It's like you're not gonna see anything. That to me is the main issue is that you're asymptomatic for up to I don't know what the time limit is. Maybe two weeks, 10 days, I forget.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think look, none of us are really health experts, and even the health experts have been somewhat caught off guard with this. So I think we owe it to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, to err on the side of caution, because as you say, like we can't see you can't see a virus, so in a way this is like even more harmful, because like a beautiful sunny day like today where the skies are blue in New York, the temptation is to, I was saying to my wife, it's almost funny, because the very same people who rightly mock Trump for his oh look, it's a snowy day, what global warming,
Yes.
the very same people are now like, oh, it's the skies are blue, like what pandemic, like I guess it's human nature to want to not panic and to have some kind of control,
Well,
sense of
yeah. Well, first of all, can your son see the virus?
if he can, he has not communicated that yet, but that's a possibility. I hadn't considered that.
I'm hearing people say, a friend of mine is like, nah, this is fear and panic. You got to be courageous. You can't let fear take over. Totally agree. I've been arguing against my stand-up act. I have a huge chunk about this now, about these helicopter parents that won't let their kids out of their sight. They're worried about a shooting. They're worried about a kidnapping. They're worried about all kinds of things that I think are irrational to some extent, to a great extent. You've got to let your kids go out and be independent and live their lives, or they will live in panic and fear. I don't think I'm doing that. I think that that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. I think this is a moral decision about what to. I'm not afraid of anything but losing money. I'm not afraid of getting sick or my daughter's necessarily getting sick. I'm worried about the people that are more vulnerable. And this is just the right thing to do as a member of a community. It's not about fear or being motivated by panic. It seems like the right moral choice to do if you're a member of a community of people. That's the way I'm seeing it. Do you agree, disagree? Would you frame it differently?
No, I would agree with that. And I do think that something like this, some sort of crisis, a pandemic, anything, that's kind of large in the scope of it, that is potentially tragic, tends to bring out or maybe amplify what your worldview already is. So if you're someone who maybe gets anxious quickly,
Yeah.
that will probably be your response to this. If you're someone who brushes things aside and says like, "Why is everyone so worried?" You'll pretty much follow suit with. I think it will amplify what your worldview tends to be already. Um, but for me, like I think equal measure of concern and taking it seriously is called for in this particular case. I mean, we as comedians, I think we tend to be a little bit skeptical and look for the humor and look for the maybe contrarian point of view with most things anyway, which is healthy and a good coping mechanism. But as you alluded to, if we look to Italy and Iran and around the globe, clearly this is not to be taken lightly. And I think, again, like the response has been probably 2 weeks slower. Italy quarantined like the northern part of Italy. Then within
Yeah.
2 days, it was like all of Italy,
Yeah.
and the US has been very lax in its response up until probably yesterday. So, and living in New York City, which is an international city with a constant flow of international travelers, tourists, even the locals who travel, myself included, we've been in airports, as you said, with a 2 week kind of asymptomatic period. Who knows how far this thing is traveling all over New York? So I think if we can't be overly cautious for 2 weeks in a pandemic,
Yeah.
like when are you going to take things seriously? Like, will you regret being extra cautious? Will you regret that looking back if it turns out to be nothing? And hopefully it will, but I doubt that it will.
Yeah, I can't see how it will not be anything but horrific in terms of what I've read, doctors having to choose who's going to live or die because we don't have enough ventilators, period. End of story. But
And I
I,
also read that the United States, with a considerably smaller population, larger population rather, has fewer hospital beds than
yeah,
either Italy or I think South Korea.
I also think that might go back to some kind of profit driven capitalism thing in terms of hospitals only have enough beds to keep them filled with patients and to keep making money. Same thing with ventilators, certainly with ICU units, I've heard.
Yeah, that
I'm
is
not,
certainly the backdrop for all of this, in my mind, for sure. The system of capitalism that commodifies things, and the tenuous financial situation that so many people find themselves in now with
yeah,
a freelance gig economy. It just underscores these basic needs that have kind of been mainstreamed in recent years, discussing healthcare and discussing potentially universal basic income, or like just
yeah, yeah.
taking a hard look at, is this society really taking care of humanity as
No,
a baseline? Yeah,
it is not.
I
No, it
agree.
is not. Do you think I'm going to try to reach out to a whole bunch of comedians for this episode? You were the first person to reach out to a few other folks, but normally when we do interviews, used to be for kind of local radio or TV or anywhere else, or even a podcast now, you don't really do your actual bits because there's no audience, it's forced, it seems hokey. But I do think it might be fun since we're not getting on stage to either talk about the bits we have been doing about the coronavirus and pandemic, or even mention ones that others have been doing. Do you, since you're our leader, do you think that is going to be too hokey for me to ask? How do you feel about me asking you about any of the bits you've been doing about the virus?
I don't mind at all. I only did like 2 nights worth of sets where I did material, but I posted one of them on Instagram.
All right. Well, everybody can go look at that at Ted Alexandro on
Let
Instagram.
let me give it a shot.
Okay.
I basically said that, like, in times like these, you need to get your news from trusted sources. I'm not talking about the mainstream media. I'm not even talking about independent media. I'm talking, of course, about your conspiracy theory friends They've got their finger on the pulse. They can tell you what needs to be done
Yeah.
immediately and long term. So my friend told me a few weeks ago, you need a month's worth of food and supplies. Get a 10-pound bag of rice, a 5-pound bag of beans, and I said, got it. 10-pound bag of rice, 5-pound bag of beans. Do you have any recipes? It sounds like a very bland month you've got planned.
There's no doubt the prepping that I did that my wife didn't take quite as seriously as I did. So if we do run low on food, she is going to be stuck with beans, rice, and canned vegetables, which seem, I mean, I haven't bought canned vegetables since we were little, little kids
Yeah,
and had no money. I remember my mom bought they're horrific. So
yeah.
yeah, that's going to be rough. Anything else that you've seen anybody do or any other jokes or humor about the virus?
I haven't really seen too many other people talking about the virus. Yeah, because like I said, I only did 2 sets. Uh, Luckily, I taped them, but yeah, but I haven't really seen anyone else talk about it. I did ask the crowd, just in like a crowd work kind of moment. I said, "Make some noise if you have Purell on your person," and of course, the whole place went nuts.
A friend of mine owns a parking garage, and he said in DC, and he said that someone broke into a car in the garage last night, and all they took was the Perel. And what's really crazy, he said, is there was a bowl of diamonds on the passenger seat, and still
Yeah,
all they took was the Purell.
uh,
So,
that's our current economy, the Purell economy.
what do you think comedians can? I mean, How are entertainers? Specifically talking about comedians because we're comics. I mean, the ripple effect in the economy is going to be very far and deep for all kinds of different industries and jobs. But I mean, it might not work for months. There's just not going to be any audiences. I wonder if you've thought anything about kind of creating a community or a support group or bringing folks together. I wonder if there's anything that we can do or that you've heard that folks are doing because this is going to be really. I mean, you're going to be putting all your best material on Twitter, I guess,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
but there's no money in it. I mean, you need money to pay your bills.
right. Well, those of us in the arts, or zooming out in the gig freelance economy, are very used to our labor being uncompensated. We have pieces of the pie where we're always giving away work for free, whether it's social media, podcasts. Much of what we do is free labor.
You're being paid for this. You didn't know? Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll Venmo you later.
I'll expect an 8-ounce Purell in the mail. But yeah, no, I think we're used to a measure of that, but now we're at a point where we literally won't be able to work for like you said, an undetermined amount of time, probably months that we're looking at. So to me, it just underscores again, it warrants a larger look at how our whole system is set up. I
Right.
think for me personally, for a lot of artists, we view this whole system as laughable, as
Depressing.
depressing, yeah, and really as homicidal, like as it's really omnicidal, I think is the word that I turn to a lot, because it's killing everything. It's killing the earth, the water, the human beings, and those who do live are living in such a tenuous state of anxiety, depression, just concerns financially, just to exist. So yeah, to me, it's all tied into what are we going to do about just existing in a more harmonious way.
Just as a survey, I mean, I don't know how far out you generally book your calendar, if there's some rhyme or reason to that for you in your career, but have you seen a lot of gigs get canceled? I've told everybody the only gig I have left on the books are in June. And to be fair, I didn't have anything yet booked for May,
Hmm.
but everything through March and April is gone.
Mm. Well, I have the good fortune of opening for Jim Gaffigan, so a lot of my calendar is opening for him. It's tied to the gigs that he has. So I kind of just fill in my own blanks around that, whether it's at the clubs in New York City or my own headlining dates on the road. So I do have upcoming dates in April in Burlington, Vermont, and I also have one in May in Royal Oak, Michigan. So I don't know if those will be canceled or not, and certainly, like I keep an open mind as to whether I will cancel them. Just out of concern of like
Right.
not wanting to be away from my wife and son, and not wanting to travel in airports, and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of a fluid situation.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to check in with you again soon on the air and probably plenty of times off the air. And I appreciate you joining me today. Do you want to share your son with everybody watching?
I think he's napping in the other room, so that will have to wait. But
If he were there, would you have a moral issue with holding him up in front of a camera? Are you posting pictures of him on social media and stuff? Where are you guys at that?
yeah, not really. Like we're kind of like we posted when he was born. I think there's maybe one kind of public picture, but yeah, we're kind of like being on the more kind of conservative side of like
Yeah.
not wanting to turn him into content. I mean, I don't judge people who do,
Yeah.
but I also kind of like there is a little bit of an icky feeling of yeah, just turning him into social media content.
Also, is part of why you're not seriously why you're not sharing any a lot of images publicly is because he's not very cute.
he
You shared a
fortunately
picture with me, and I was frankly astonished by his appearance and
he looks
concerned
more
for him.
like my wife. He looks more like my wife than me. So we've dodged the bullet.
No, I'm talking about the huge beard that he has and how that's a genetic phenomena, and it's really, really weird that he looks exactly like your head now. If people want to imagine, that's it.
Again, it just to me it further proves that he is descended from
It's a
our
great
Lord.
point, son of Jesus. And maybe he can make some money at the freak show at the carnival,
You'd
baby with
think,
a beard. I don't want to
yeah,
give you, I don't want to be too capitalist on you.
that's not a bad idea given the current situation. I'll keep that in my back pocket.
He's a beautiful boy, and I'm so glad that you and your wife are his parents. And I guess silver linings, you get a lot of special time with him right now. Hopefully,
Yeah,
you got to wonder about like couples going at it too. Like when we're cooped up, I wonder how marriages and families are gonna do. I think it's a really fascinating time to look at sociologically, social psychologically, in terms of putting a pause on life and finding, I don't know, making discoveries that you hadn't made before in terms of what you can do and how you can find peace and happiness. Have you thought about that yet that much?
I have. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's my sweet spot. Like, I love pausing life. Like, it's really,
Now I don't feel guilty. I've been saying the same thing. I'm like, let's do this.
yeah, it's kind of where I flourish, man. I don't buy into, I don't buy into so much of this forced busyness. And I think for me, I very much like a pace of detaching and just like doing what we've been doing. I said it to my wife the other day. I'm like, I really do feel lucky that I've been here every day, especially at this early. He's 2 months old, 2.5 months. So
Yeah,
to just have time to play with him and all these little precious moments. So yeah, I'm grateful for that silver lining.
that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. All right, I'll let you go. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it.
Love you, pal.
Love you too. Ted Alexandro, everybody. Go follow him right now on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. And what other plugs should we give? What can people buy to support you right now, albums wise?
Yeah, I have albums and all that stuff. TedAlexandro.com. I have a podcast that Pete has been
Oh,
on,
forgive me for not plugging the podcast. Yes,
A Little Bit Me. You can find that everywhere.
it's a great premise. Explain the premise real quick.
Well, the first half is just me rambling, and then the second half I call comedian friends unannounced, unscheduled, unplanned,
You
and I
just cold call comedians and
interrupt.
press record.
Yes, yes. I ask them, "Do you want to be on my podcast?" They invariably say, "Sure." When? And I say, "We're recording right now."
It's great. And the craziest thing is that when I found out that you were doing that, I, I just was waiting and starting to feel insecure. And and hoping. And I was like, you know, it's not the kind of thing that you could ask anybody to book you for. It's like Ted just thinks of you for whatever reason, and then he calls you. You can't have like an agent or something like, could you tell Ted Alexandro that I'm free? And I feel like you do it somehow organically. And so you waited till you found out that I lost my dream job of 12 years. You called maybe a couple days after I announced that, and
Yeah.
you opened with something like, I figured you had some free time, and it was really great.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is very much an organic thing. I don't plan it, and actually, people who have asked me, I have not called.
Have people asked?
A couple of people have said, can I do it? Like, because I don't.
Anybody respectable? I would never ask you to say their name, but anybody that you would say is,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
people I respect, but they had something to promote or whatever, and I was just like, I just scroll my phone and I call people. It's not a,
right.
maybe I'll get to them eventually, but it kind of, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to, I don't want to like fulfill your PR needs.
Ah, that's great. A little bit me
Yeah.
podcast. Go listen to it now. You can thank me later for introducing you to Ted if you weren't already familiar with him. Oh, I should mention this real quick. My BFF is in Australia, a guy named David Campbell. I polo with him every day. That's something everybody should get, the Marco Polo app. It's real fun, especially for male friendship, because we don't always have the best conversations. You don't know what to say sometimes, so you just say stuff into the camera and you send it, and they send it back. Anyway, he is a monster fan of yours down in Australia. He's a famous singer and television anchor down there, and he always talks about Ted Alexandro. And so, if people aren't fans in internationally listening, check it out.
And
It
his name?
translates. David Campbell.
David Campbell. Awesome. Well, thank you, David. I'll check him out.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
yeah. You got to tweet him. He'll be over the moon. That'd be funny.
Nice.
All right, man. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure, Pete. Thank you, pal.